From Johnson's article of hypervisibility and invisibility, racial surveillance is when figures question family legitimacy, and racial erasure is everyday interactions that ignore family relations. This impacts families by placing immense amount of anxiety and stress on them. It also puts them in a situation where they have to perform as a family in public. This can create a paradox of hypervisibility and invisibility. Some examples that are present in society today are at restaurants, social media, and at school. And for me specifically, being from a mixed race family, I felt some of these impacts to a pretty minor degree. An example of these impacts from the reading was the pet store worker assuming that the parents weren't together. Also, when TSA questioned the black mom but not the white dad. That specifically was a display of white privilege and racism. This causes families to feel like they have to change their behavior when in public, which is different from how they would act at home. This points back to the performing family that Johnson mentioned. Because of my mixed race identity, with my mom being white and my dad being black, I've had to expect how people view my family. I've personally never experienced someone outright saying something to us, but people have definitely given us looks, and even my coworkers, just out of curiosity, have asked about my ethnicity. But my parents have told me that, especially when they were dating, that when they would go to restaurants, people would question them and give them looks, especially at my dad. Now I'll talk about the views on race. And Goldberg's quote on racial perceptions meant that people aren't just dealing with their race, but also how others treat them because of it. As stated in the text, colored youth are also very aware of the stereotypes and unequal treatment directed towards them. However, the white youth don't face these same difficulties, and unlike the youth of different ethnicities, they are usually unaware of how race affects the youth. The reading pointed to signs of progress, such as different race friendships and increased awareness. Some of the evidence to back the claims of the youth is that the youth of color describe the discrimination and judgment they face. In contrast, the white youth are often blinded to these events until they hear the stories of their peers. And the fact that they're open to cross-race discussion shows a positive shift. Throughout history, especially during the racial segregation of the mid to late 1900s, the colored youth were often taught to expect the bias, while the white youth weren't. And as described in the article, the generational shift has caused younger people to be more open to discussing race. I think this has and will help form more inclusive attitudes and empathy across youth races. For me personally, because of my mixed race background, both sides of my family, white and black, talk with great kindness towards one another and are open to discussion that wouldn't have existed back then. Also, it's common today for diverse friend groups to form naturally, and I am a part of friend groups that have mixed races and we get along quite well. But because of racial segregation, people of color were almost separated entirely from the whites as far as the things they use and who they were involved with. And my dad has talked to me about this before and just how things were so much different back then. And I think just overall, people being willing to talk and have conversations that would have been difficult to have back then helps create a more inclusive society.